everybody, this is Audra here at Homesteading in Idaho, bringing you another video for the Shed Wars Challenge. Okay, so let's talk about fall gardening. What? Fall gardening? It's July, and if you're in most of this country, you've been cooking to death, right? Here in Idaho, we have not seen a day under 94-ish degrees for like 6 weeks now. It's the last week of July right now, and I think it was like mid-June, the temperatures just skyrocketed. We went from normal temperatures where we'd be in the 80s to the high 90s and in the 100s, and we've been like this for at least 6 weeks now. But yes, it really is time to start thinking about your fall garden. No, I've not gone crazy. It's that time of year. So I've got 3 types of seeds here to show as examples, but as you know, there are a lot of different options out there. Specifically, I want to talk about growing root crops for your fall gardening. Now, obviously, you can do this in the soil, in your ground, in your garden, raised beds, et cetera, et cetera. But we're kind of primarily focusing on container gardening. And so I've got 3 here as an example. Like I said, I could go pull a whole bunch more. And if you want to see other ones, let me know. And I'll happily talk about those ones. But these ones were just like the quick 3 I could grab. They're kind of diverse. So hopefully it'll kind of give you guys some ideas on your gardening in your containers. So got 3 different seeds here. I've got radishes, beets, and carrots. Let's start with carrots. So if I'm going to be growing carrots in a container, I want to make sure that my container is nice and deep. Now, how deep? So consider a container about a gallon size and at least 8 inches deep, but I like to go 10 to 12 inches deep. But again, also, if you can do a variety of carrot that's going to be shorter, it's going to be better. So what type of pot size should you be considering to use for your carrots? Well, I have done those, I call them window boxes. I don't know what else to call them. They're long, they're a rectangular box, and they're only 8 to 9 inches deep probably, as some of them are deeper. And I've used those, and I've done where I do carrots like down the middle. Another year I did it where I did them like along the edges of it. You have to leave that gap there so the carrots have some room to spread out. I haven't really done the box method in a few years. I do like to use round containers. And so if you guys are a dairy eater, like the large containers for yogurt. So they're roughly a quart. And that's about the smallest I would go, is a quart size. But you can totally grow in it. I've been doing it. So in a quart size, like yogurt container, cottage cheese container, and some of those are bigger than a quart, I know. Let's see, sour cream containers. So you don't have to go buy pots. If you're already eating these things, you can be saving those containers and using them. So you're recycling, reducing, all of that fun jazz, and you're not having to go buy more pots. Now, carrots really, really like soil that's got some good drainage and not a lot of obstruction. So if you've been watching my videos for a while, I'm a fan of wood chips, and I'm a fan of compost and all this different stuff. When I do carrots, I like my compost material, I'll take it and I screen it. So I shake it to get all the clumps out, and I use the finer bits of that compost. I still like to use wood chips at the bottom of my containers to help prevent too much draining out, especially that finer soil and finer compost. So I do like my wood chips, but just at the bottom. And then I don't use them at the top when I'm doing these little guys because it can obstruct their growth. But like I said, if you've been watching, like when I do the peppers, tomatoes, things like that, I kind of put some wood chips at the top. So anyway, on these guys, I do put the wood chips at the bottom, and I make sure I've got good holes in the bottom for good drainage. You don't want your soil to totally dry out because you'll just kill your carrots. But you want to have good drainage. It's encouraging that root to grow down. So anyway, in a container like that, like I was saying, the quart size container, gallon size container, and a gallon, if it's a nice like rounded one, I probably would grow like 4 clumps of carrots. And now clumps, what's a clump? So on my carrots, and which honestly, so I know I'm talking about carrots. Let's just roll this video I'm just chatting about all of it. Otherwise, y'all, this is going to be like a 20-minute video if I go over each one of these. So you're definitely, for any of these, well-drained soil, you're going to want finer soil. This is where I do like to utilize the bagged garden soil, and I use like the finer compost material. You don't want the compost that's got chunks in it because it can inhibit the growth on these. If they're in the garden, they don't care. They just push those chunks out of the way. In a pot, there's only so many places that these chunks that are in that can really go, and it's going to impede the growth on these. So anyway, wood chips at the bottom, fine compost, fine potting soil, and just mix it up really well, and then you plant these on top. Now here's the trick. Like with these guys, these are smaller seeds. These ones you can easily put in 1/2 inch deep, 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch. These ones are so fine. They don't like being covered up. So what I do is I get my soil the way I like it. And let's say I'm using a quart-sized pot. Maybe this will give you an idea. You know, that's that large container of yogurt. Got that. It's like, you know, it's round. So anyway, I'll take my carrots and I'll figure out where the middle is. And I'll put 4 seeds right there. And then I'll get some of my soil and I'll sprinkle it on there. Or Will It Grow, he demonstrated how he uses the sand from the beaches and he puts it on there. I'm in Idaho. We don't really have beaches. We don't have a lot of sand. I mean, we have desert sand, so it works. But I just put a little tiny bit. I mean, I'm just sprinkling a little bit of soil on top just to cover the seeds a little bit. And then you just keep it moist, keep it moist, keep it moist. The key to any of these, especially in a container, but in the garden as well, keep them moist. You know, you don't want to drown them and you don't want to cause growth of bacteria and mold and fungus and all that stuff, because then you're gonna have issues with that. But keep it moist. You've got to encourage that seedling to want to develop. I do the same thing with the radishes in a container like that. I'll just put a clump of 3 or 4. Now, what in the world? You know, these things say thin. They say one per space. Why am I clumping them? They will push even in a container. Now remember, this is why you need that fluffy, fine soil. In a container, you'll have 4 of them growing, and they'll push each other around as they're making room. Sometimes you'll end up with carrots that have wrapped themselves around each other. But for the most part, they're pretty good about pushing themselves apart. You can also grow onions the same way. I didn't pull any onions out, but onions are the same way. Put them in clumps of 3 or 4. They just push each other out of the way. Now, the beets, I easily put them in a 1/2 inch. And then again, I add like a fine little bit of soil over the top if I feel like it. In a container like that, if I'm wanting them to stay small, like pickling size or just bite size, I'll plant 4 in a cluster. If I'm kind of wanting to go toward the larger size for pickling or for eating, the larger ones, I'll do clumps of 2 or 3. Now you're going to have a lot of pots, right? I mean, you know, for these, but it is totally possible. And the glorious part, you know, all of these, you know, your carrots, this is a 20 to 30 day harvest, but remember that's after it has started growing. This one, the beets, it's a 55, 60 day harvest, but I'm going into fall right now. I can probably do, like if I were to sow my carrots every 2 weeks, I could be planting here in Idaho, zoned down near the Boise area, kind of near the capital. I will start my radishes if I can keep them from getting snow covered and frosted. Like I have a greenhouse, or even inside. You can be planting these every 2 weeks in containers, and you could actually, these make a really fantastic wintering crop. If you can create a cold frame to put outside, put your pots inside of it, like a cold frame with a window on top, they'll actually continue to grow. Just plant every 2 weeks, because you'll end up with a harvest and a harvest and a harvest. Radishes are great for fresh eating, pickling, sauteing, baking, lots of different uses. The carrots also, they can get more finicky the colder it gets. But again, if you have the ability to do a cold frame or try to grow them inside, things like that, you could actually do your carrots if you're growing every 2 weeks. At least plant through September. And same with the radishes. So, but with radishes, like I said, you could go clear through October and keep getting a harvest. Beets, I easily will continue to plant every 2 weeks through October. But then I also like to have a bunch of these that I'll put into containers and I'll put in the greenhouse, because they're going to slow down on growth unless you have lights. And I do have lights in my greenhouse that have helped to continue that growth. But if you don't, guess what? You're not growing the root anymore. You're growing the tops. And beet tops are phenomenal in salads. Dry them out, use them for smoothies, things like that. So with these crops, you've got multiple uses. And then with radishes, you can also eat the seed pods. So anyway, it is time to start thinking about that fall gardening, fall container gardening, getting your stuff in. It's totally possible to grow these in containers. A few years ago, I was at a seminar, and this person was like, for one beet, you would need a minimum of 1 gallon of soil. And I really got to thinking about it. I was like, no, it makes sense in the fact that your soil in a container is not being fed from things around it like it is in a garden setting. In a garden setting, I can continually feed my soil with grass clippings, garden compost, all this. But now, wait a minute. Why can't I do that with a container? And if you watch the videos I posted this last month, you will have seen that I feed my containers with, I put like cantaloupe scraps in there. I put, oh gosh, I think there's cabbage, and I put food scraps in my pots toward the bottom. It's occurring to me now it is at the bottom, so it's going to wash out a little sooner. But hey, once you've planted it, maybe consider putting some scraps in some of these containers behind me. If you were to look at them, some people are like, what's going on there? Because I've got eggshells, I've got plant scraps, I've got grass clippings, wood chips, fruit scraps, vegetable scraps, and I put it on top and I just water it in. Think about it. If you can't feed a container plant as easily as you can in a garden, it's only because you haven't thought about how to do it. So it might look unsightly and maybe you don't want to do it in your house. But you're going to be able to grow. I'm growing some really great, phenomenal plants by continuing to feed them. So just kind of play with that. Even if, like, say my brain is gone here. You steam vegetables or you boil vegetables. Save the water, set it aside, let it cool off. Don't pour boiling hot water on your plants. You'll kill them. Anyway, let that water cool. Water your plants with that. You're now giving those nutrition back to your plants, creating healthier plants. Okay, so I could talk forever about this, but I'm not going to. It was great talking to you guys. If you've got questions, put them down below. Go check out SHEDWARS. It's a really great community. Everybody's got some phenomenal videos they're doing. Anyway, I'll catch you all on the next one. Bye, guys.